My name is Elena Carter. I am 28 years old today. And this story begins not with celebration but with the silent weight of memory. My family is gathered for what should be a joyful occasion, yet every smile at the table feels like a mask hiding something darker. Let me introduce the people who shape this story, each of them carrying secrets they think I do not see. My father Richard is 62, the commanding presence in any room, a man who built his empire on charm and manipulation. My mother Margaret is 58, elegant and graceful but cold, loyal to my father's schemes even when they crush her own children. My brother Michael is 32, the golden boy of the family, adored, spoiled, and arrogant, convinced the world owes him everything. My sister Sophia is 26, sweet and quiet on the surface, but her silence hides complicity, a shadow loyalty to my parents that cuts deeper than open betrayal. Then there is Aunt Vivian, my father's sister, 55, the black sheep of the family who lives on the margins of our gatherings, an outsider who watches more than she speaks. Finally, there is Daniel Hayes, my childhood friend, 30 years old, steady, kind, and the only person I trust enough to share the edges of my truth. The day begins with the scent of roses arranged on the dining table, a gift from my mother who believes beauty masks cruelty. My father greets me with a grand smile, his hand heavy on my shoulder, as if the weight of his palm alone could keep me in my place. Michael smirks as he enters the room, perfectly dressed, his gold watch glinting in the morning light, a reminder of everything he has taken and everything my parents willingly gave him. Sophia hands me a card, her eyes avoiding mine, her fingers trembling just slightly, but not enough for anyone else to notice. Vivian arrives late, as always, dressed in her own eccentric style, with sharp eyes that sweep across the room as if she is tallying sins no one else dares to acknowledge. Breakfast is polite, filled with chatter about trivial matters, the latest business deal my father is closing, Michael's new promotion, Sophia's plans for a holiday trip. No one asks me what I want for my birthday, no one wonders what dreams I still hold. They never do. I sip my coffee and let the warmth coat my throat, while inside, cold resolve begins to stir. For years I have lived in this house where favoritism thrived, where my brother was crowned king before he could walk, where my sister learned to survive by siding with strength, and where I was left to find scraps of affection in silence. As the hours pass, preparations for the birthday dinner begin. My mother oversees the caterers, her voice sharp as glass when they falter, while my father pours wine with the confidence of a man who believes he owns not only the bottle but the vineyard itself. Michael entertains a group of his friends in the living room, laughing loudly, his voice carrying through the halls like a constant reminder that he is always at the center. Sophia hovers at the edges, never too close, never too far, her presence like a ghost that lingers but never speaks. I retreat to my room for a moment of solitude. The mirror reflects a woman they underestimate, a daughter they consider secondary, a sister they push aside. Yet beneath the surface of my calm expression lies a storm gathering, a knowledge that today is not just my birthday. It is something more, though I keep that truth buried, hidden, even from my own lips. When evening falls, the guests arrive. Laughter fills the house, music hums softly in the background, glasses clink together in cheerful toasts. I sit at the head of the table as the guest of honor, but I know that here in this family, honor is only an illusion. My father raises his glass and speaks of my accomplishments, words that sound polished but hollow, a performance for the outsiders watching. My mother smiles at me, her eyes glinting with the pride of a woman who believes she has orchestrated the perfect family tableau. Michael leans in and whispers a joke meant to remind me of my place, while Sophia avoids my gaze altogether. Vivian sips her wine slowly, her gaze meeting mine for just a flicker of a second, and in that look, I sense she knows more than she lets on. The dinner courses arrive one after another, each dish exquisite, each bite carefully crafted, but I taste only bitterness. I listen to my father boast, my mother preen, my brother bask, and my sister hide. I smile when expected, laugh when required, and all the while I wait. The gifts are presented one by one, wrapped in shiny paper tied with perfect bows. My parents hand me a necklace, gold and heavy, a symbol of wealth rather than love. Michael gives me a watch, expensive, flashy, a mirror of his own vanity. Sophia offers a book of poetry, her voice soft as she explains why she chose it, though her eyes refuse to meet mine. Vivian surprises me with an old photo album, worn at the edges, filled with pictures of me as a child, smiling in moments I had almost forgotten. Her gift feels like a reminder that I once belonged somewhere, that once I mattered. As the candles flicker on my cake and the chorus of "Happy Birthday" echoes around me, I make a wish. But unlike the wishes of childhood, for toys, for love, for approval, this wish is darker, sharper, forged in the fire of betrayal. I blow out the candles, the smoke curling into the air like the first whisper of a storm, and I smile. Now, before I continue, let me speak directly to you, the ones who sit in the shadows of my story. You are watching this unfold as though seated at the far corner of my family's table, unseen yet witnessing every glance, every whispered word, every false smile. You know what it feels like to see betrayal up close, to taste bitterness behind the sweetness of celebration. If you want to continue joining me in stories like this, stories of secrets and vengeance, you are welcome in our community of hidden watchers, where the truth is always sharper than the lie. Now let us return to the night that changed everything. The cake is sliced, the plates are cleared, the guests mingle in laughter. My father, ever the host, raises his glass again, but his words blur in my ears. I watch his lips move, watch the pride in his eyes, and I remember the papers I found tucked away in his study, the ones that told me what he had done, what they all had done. I glance at Michael, his confidence so unshakable, unaware that his foundation is about to crack. I look at Sophia, her silence as suffocating as ever, not realizing that silence can also betray. I look at my mother, her elegance unbroken, not knowing that elegance shatters the loudest when it falls. And I look at Vivian, whose eyes never leave mine, as though she is waiting, just waiting to see what I will do. But not yet. Tonight is only the beginning. Tonight, I let them believe everything is as it seems. The heist is not in the taking, but in the waiting, in the patience of a daughter who has been underestimated too long. My birthday is the stage, the players are ready, and the curtain has only just begun to rise. After the candles burned out and the laughter dulled to background noise, I excused myself from the table and slipped into the study, the one room in the house where secrets like to hide behind mahogany shelves and locked drawers. My father always thought I was too sentimental to pry, too soft to search, but I had learned to read his world of hidden compartments. Tonight, the study smelled faintly of cigar smoke and leather, the way it always did when he entertained business partners, but instead of closing the door I left it slightly ajar so I could hear the distant echo of voices drifting from the dining room. I pulled the second drawer of his desk open, the one he thought was cleverly secured, and there it was, the envelope that had changed everything for me weeks ago. Inside were the forged documents, papers that rewrote my future, stolen signatures, altered clauses. My inheritance, my right, my share of everything my grandfather had left to me, vanished with a stroke of my father's pen and the willing compliance of my mother and brother. My father had made sure Michael would inherit the lion's share, with Sophia written in as a secondary beneficiary, while I had been erased, not forgotten by mistake but cut out deliberately. I touched the papers again, my fingertips grazing the ink, and a fresh wave of rage simmered beneath my calm expression. I remembered the night I first found them, the hours I spent staring at the proof, unable to breathe, unable to believe the betrayal. It was not enough that my father had favored Michael all my life, not enough that my mother looked at him as the perfect son while I was always the afterthought, not enough that Sophia learned to keep her loyalty where the power was strongest. Now they had stolen what little was rightfully mine, as if I had never existed, as if I was a mistake to be erased from the family record. A sound in the hallway pulled me back, the familiar confident stride of Michael approaching. I quickly slipped the envelope back, locking the drawer again, and stepped away from the desk just as he entered the room. His smile was smug, his eyes glinting with superiority. "Hiding from the party already?" he asked, his voice dripping with the mockery he had perfected over the years. I forced a smile. "Just catching my breath," I replied. He leaned against the doorframe, folding his arms across his chest, and for a moment he looked like a king surveying his domain. "You know," he said, "Father is proud of me. The business is growing, and with me leading it will only get better. You should be happy for the family." His words were carefully chosen, calculated to remind me that in his mind I was not part of that vision, that my role was to watch him shine. I nodded politely, biting back the words I wanted to throw in his face. He smirked again and walked away, leaving me in the quiet darkness of the study, My fists clenched, my pulse racing. I knew now more than ever that patience was my weapon. Silence my ally, timing my power. Later that evening, as the guests lingered over dessert and coffee, I found myself sitting beside Sophia. She looked nervous, her fingers twisting the hem of her dress, her eyes darting to me and then away. I leaned closer and whispered, "Are you all right?" She hesitated before answering, her voice barely audible. "I didn't want this, Elena. Father insisted. Michael insisted. I had no choice." Her confession was quiet, broken, but it was enough to confirm what I already knew. She had been part of it. Not the mastermind, no, but complicit, a silent partner to the theft of my future. I placed my hand gently on hers, as if in comfort, but inside, I marked her name in the ledger of betrayal. The night ended with the usual toasts, my father's booming laughter filling the room, my mother's elegance on display, Michael's arrogance unchecked, Sophia's silence suffocating, and Vivian's quiet gaze burning into me as though she could read the thoughts I kept locked behind my smile. Daniel arrived late, slipping in quietly, offering me a small wrapped gift and a smile that reached his eyes. He stayed only a short while, but his presence grounded me, reminded me that not all bonds were poisoned. He was the one person I could trust with fragments of my plan, though even he did not yet know the full shape of what I intended. When the house finally emptied of guests and the night grew quiet, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the evening. The forged documents weighed heavily on my mind, the stolen inheritance gnawed at my resolve, and the smugness of my brother's words burned like fire in my chest. I thought of my mother's false smile, my father's heavy hand, my sister's whispered excuses. I thought of Vivian's watchful eyes and Daniel's quiet strength, and I knew without a doubt that this birthday was not an end but a beginning. In the days that followed, I played my part carefully. I smiled when my mother called. I congratulated Michael on his latest achievements. I listened as my father lectured me about responsibility. I let Sophia think her whispered guilt was enough to absolve her. All the while I moved quietly, like a shadow weaving through the halls of the house, like a thief in my own family's story. I visited Daniel often, his small apartment a refuge from the storm. He asked questions, gentle ones, but I deflected with half-truths. Still, he knew enough to sense the danger simmering beneath my calm. He promised to stand by me no matter what, and I believed him. One evening, I found myself alone with Aunt Vivian. She studied me over the rim of her glass of wine, her eyes sharp, her voice low. "They think you are weak," she said simply. "They think you will let this pass." I looked at her, unsure how much she truly knew. "And what do you think?" I asked. A slow smile curved her lips. "I think they have forgotten who you are. I think they are about to remember." Her words settled into me like a seed, feeding the quiet fire already burning inside. As the days turned into weeks, the tension grew heavier, the distance between my family and me wider, though they pretended not to notice. My father focused on his business, my mother on her appearances, Michael on his rise, Sophia on her silence. But I noticed. I noticed everything. And I waited. Now let me turn to you, the watchers in the shadows of my story. You have followed me through the cracks in this family's perfect picture. You have seen the rot beneath the surface. You know what it feels like to be betrayed by the people who should have protected you, to be erased by the hands that should have lifted you. You sit at the edge of my world, invisible yet present, and I welcome you into this circle of secrets. If you want to keep walking beside me, if you want to see how shadows can become weapons, then stay close because the story is about to darken. Back to the house, back to the stage where betrayal grows. I began to gather small pieces, fragments of evidence, whispers of truth. I copied documents when no one was looking. I recorded conversations masked as casual dinners. I planted questions that would lead to careless answers. My father spoke too loudly sometimes, Michael bragged too openly. My mother slipped in her polished veneer. Sophia remained quiet, but her guilt leaked out in nervous glances and half-spoken apologies. Every moment became a thread I could pull, every thread leading me closer to unraveling the fabric they had woven against me. At night, I dreamed of justice, though I never whispered the word aloud. I dreamed of standing in the ruins of their false kingdom, of watching their masks crack, of hearing the silence that follows when truth finally arrives. I dreamed of my grandfather, the man who left me the inheritance because he believed in me, the man whose memory they tried to erase. I dreamed of his voice reminding me that strength is not always loud, that power is not always visible, that patience is the sharpest blade. And so I waited. My birthday had passed, but the heist was only just beginning. The weeks after my birthday stretched long and heavy, the kind of days where silence is louder than any scream, where patience feels like a blade pressed to your palm, sharp and waiting. I smiled when my father called me into his office to lecture me about responsibility, his words dripping with the arrogance of a man who thought he had secured everything for his golden son. I smiled when my mother presented me to her friends as if I were an ornament, a decorative daughter whose purpose was to fill the background. I smiled when Michael boasted about the future of the company, his inheritance, his certainty that he was untouchable. I even smiled when Sophia, in a hushed whisper, told me again that she was sorry, that she had no choice, as if her apology could erase the ink of betrayal. Inside I was quiet fire. Inside I was planning every detail of their undoing. I chose the next family gathering carefully. Another dinner, another performance of perfection, another opportunity for them to boast and preen. It would be Michael's celebration this time, a party to honor his so-called achievements, a dinner where all eyes would be on him, where my father would praise him, where my mother would beam at him, where Sophia would stay silent, and where Vivian would sip her wine detached but present. And I would be there, the invisible one, the underestimated one, the forgotten one, except I would not remain forgotten for long. Daniel helped me in small but crucial ways. He had access to legal minds who could validate the forged documents I had discovered. He helped me secure copies, notarize proof that the signatures were faked, the clauses rewritten, the will corrupted. Together we pieced everything into a neat file, one that spoke louder than any words I could say. But I knew proof alone was not enough. Proof needed a stage. Proof needed an audience. Proof needed to be a weapon in the right moment. And so I prepared my gift, carefully wrapped, perfectly timed, waiting for the night when it would explode in their hands. When the evening arrived, I dressed simply, nothing to draw attention, nothing to give away the storm I carried. The house was bright with lights, laughter echoing through the halls, music playing softly beneath the hum of conversation. Guests filled the rooms, glasses clinked, my father's voice boomed, my mother's smile dazzled. Michael basked in his spotlight, Sophia lingered on the edge, Vivian watched in silence. Everything was as it always was, perfect on the surface, rotten underneath. The dinner was grand, course after course of delicacies, my father making speeches about legacy, my mother complimenting Michael's charm, guests applauding, Michael smirking as if he were already crowned king of the world. I listened, nodded, sipped my wine and waited. The weight of my gift sat quietly at my feet, a box wrapped in golden paper, tied with a red ribbon, as innocent as any other present. But inside it was dynamite. When the time came for gifts, I waited until the end. My parents gave Michael a watch, sleek and expensive, a symbol of his time to rule. Sophia gave him a book, carefully chosen, her voice small as she presented it. Vivian gave him a bottle of aged wine, her lips curling in the faintest of smiles. And then finally it was my turn. I wanted to give you something special, Michael, I said, my voice steady, calm, every eye in the room turning toward me. I placed the box in front of him, the ribbon glinting in the light. He smirked, certain it was nothing of value, certain it was just another reminder of my insignificance. He tore the paper away carelessly, opened the box and froze. Inside lay a sleek black folder, the kind our father used for business, but this one was filled with copies of the documents I had gathered. Michael's eyes flicked to mine, confusion giving way to something sharper. "What is this?" he demanded. "Open it," I replied softly. He flipped through the pages, his face paling with each turn. My father's laughter faltered, my mother's smile froze, Sophia's hands began to tremble. Vivian leaned back in her chair, her eyes glinting like she had been waiting for this moment all her life. "These are fake," my father boomed, his voice louder than necessary, desperate to control the room. "Ridiculous lies, fabrications." "No," I said, my voice cutting through his. "They are the truth. Proof of the forgery, proof of the signatures you faked, proof of the inheritance you stole. Every page authenticated, every signature examined, every clause verified. You thought you erased me. You thought you cut me out of my grandfather's will. But you forgot, father, you forgot that shadows always see what light tries to hide. The room erupted in whispers, guests leaning toward one another, eyes wide, scandal blooming like wildfire. My mother tried to speak, but her words cracked, her mask breaking. Michael shoved the folder away, his face red with anger, but the papers lay open on the table for all to see. Sophia's silence shattered, tears spilling down her cheeks as she whispered, "I told you I didn't want this." But her words were drowned out by the noise, the gasps, the murmurs, the shifting tide of power in the room. Vivian stood then, slowly, deliberately, her voice carrying with unexpected strength. "I warned you, Richard. I warned you that greed always eats its own. I told you Elena was not to be underestimated. And now everyone sees what you tried to bury." My father's face turned ashen, his hands shaking, his authority crumbling in front of the very people he sought to impress. My mother's elegance shattered, her voice breaking as she tried to defend what could not be defended. Michael shouted, raged, cursed, but his words sounded hollow, the tantrum of a man exposed. Sophia wept openly, her guilt finally breaking free. And I sat in silence, calm and steady, the storm within me finally breaking into the world. Now let me turn to you, the watchers who sit at the edge of my story. You see it now, don't you? The collapse of false kingdoms, the shattering of masks, the sound of betrayal cracking open for all to hear. You are with me in this moment, as if seated in the corner of the dining room, invisible but present, watching the mighty fall. If you crave more stories like this, if you wish to stand in the shadows where truth sharpens into vengeance, then join us, because here in this circle we do not look away. We watch, we learn, and we remember. Back to the room, back to the aftermath. Guests began to leave, their eyes filled with judgment, whispers trailing behind them like smoke. My father slumped in his chair, broken, his voice gone. My mother avoided every gaze, her reputation unraveling. Michael stormed out, but the papers followed him, his future poisoned. Sophia clung to me, sobbing apologies, but forgiveness was not mine to give. Vivian raised her glass to me in silent toast, the outsider finally vindicated. In the days that followed, the fallout was swift. The company my father built wavered under the weight of scandal. Michael's promotion was revoked, his name stained. My mother's social circle collapsed, her invitations withdrawn. Sophia withdrew from the family entirely, consumed by shame. Vivian stepped into the light, her voice respected for the first time. And me, I walked forward, not as the forgotten daughter, not as the erased heir, but as the one who had taken back what was mine, not just the inheritance but the power to be seen, the power to be remembered. I think often of my grandfather, of the trust he placed in me, of the inheritance meant to secure my future. I think of the nights I dreamed of justice, of the patience it took to wait, of the silence it required to strike. And I know now that revenge is not always loud, not always violent. Sometimes revenge is a gift wrapped in golden paper, placed on the table for everyone to see, a truth that no one can deny. And so the heist was complete. Not of jewels, not of money, but of power. I stole back my place, I stole back my name, I stole back the truth. And as I walked away from the ruins of my family's empire, I smiled, because the greatest gift I ever received was the reminder that shadows can shine brighter than any golden boy.